Hello. It's good to see you. I hope you're comfortable. If you need to adjust your pillow or pull the blanket up a little, that's okay. I can wait. There. Tonight I thought I'd talk to you about death. And I know that might sound like a strange thing to help you fall asleep, but I've been thinking about it lately, and I've realized that death is actually all around us in very small, quiet ways. And most of those ways aren't scary at all. Some of them are even kind of nice. Like, for instance, my neighbor Gene. You haven't met Gene, but he's a good guy, keeps his lawn very neat. He told me last week that he thinks about death every time he goes to bed, not in a sad way. He just lies there and thinks, well, if this is it, that was pretty good. And then he falls asleep. He's been doing this for 30 years. He says it helps him sleep like a baby. I thought that was interesting. I've been trying it myself, and it does something to your brain. Makes everything feel a little more important, but also less important at the same time, if that makes sense. Like when you're watching the sunset, and you think, I should really pay attention to this, but then you also think, well, the sun's going to set tomorrow too, probably. Although I suppose one day it won't, but that's a long time from now. Anyway, I was out walking yesterday evening, just before dark. I like to walk then because the light gets very soft and everything looks a little kinder, and I passed the cemetery on Harrison Street. You know the one. It has that big oak tree near the front gate that's probably 200 years old, and I noticed the groundskeeper was still there, pushing a wheelbarrow full of cut grass. I waved. He waved back, and I thought about how someone has to mow cemeteries. That's a job someone does. Probably doesn't pay great, but it's steady work, I imagine. And it's important. Because even though all those people are gone, someone still takes care of the place. Keeps it tidy. Makes sure the grass doesn't get too high. That seems kind, doesn't it? I stood there for a minute, watching him work, and I thought about all the people in that cemetery. Hundreds of them, probably. Maybe thousands. All from this town. All who lived here, worked here, complained about the snow in February, celebrated when the Lions won a game. People who had recipes they loved, and jokes that killed at parties and opinions about the best time to plant tomatoes. And now they're all there together, under that nice oak tree, while the groundskeeper mows. It made me feel very small, but also very connected to something, like being part of a long line of people standing in the same spot, one after another, looking at the same moon. My grandma died when I was 12. Her name was Helen. She made the best cinnamon rolls I've ever had, and she kept them in a tin with a picture of a cardinal on it, red tin, dented on one side because my grandpa dropped it once in 1974, and she never replaced it. She said the dent gave it character. When she died, it was winter, February. Not during a snowstorm or anything dramatic like that. Just a regular February day. Grey. Kind of slushy outside. The kind of day where you don't really want to go out, but you don't really want to stay in, either. I remember sitting at the kitchen table after we got the phone call, and my mom was crying, not loud, just quiet crying while she held a cup of coffee. And my dad was making phone calls to relatives, and I was just sitting there eating cereal. I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I should be doing something, but I was 12, and I was hungry, so I ate Cheerios. And I felt bad about that for a long time. Like I'd done something wrong. Like I should have been sadder, or I should have cried, or I shouldn't have been hungry at a time like that. But my dad saw me eating, and he came over and put his hand on my head. He used to do that a lot when I was a kid, just rest his hand on top of my head like I was a dog or something, which sounds weird, but it was actually very comforting. And he said, "It's okay to eat, Joe. You still got to eat." And that was it. He went back to making phone calls. But I think about that a lot. You still got to eat. Life keeps going, even when you think it should stop. Even when it feels wrong that it keeps going. You get hungry. The mail still comes. Someone still has to feed the dog. My friend Sarah, she teaches second grade at the elementary school. She told me once that every year, without fail, one of her students will ask her if she's ever going to die. And she always says, yes, someday, but not for a very long time, I hope. And usually the kid will think about that for a second, and then say, okay, and go back to coloring or whatever they were doing. Sarah says kids are better at death than adults are. They ask the question, they get an answer, and then they move on. They don't sit with it for hours, turning it over in their minds, trying to figure out what it means. They just accept it as one more fact about the world, like grass is green or dogs have 4 legs. I think we should probably be more like that. Although I do think about it more than I used to, not in a bad way, just in a noticing way. Like I'll be at the grocery store, and I'll see an old guy, probably in his 80s, carefully picking out apples, really examining each one, and I'll think, I wonder if he knows how many apples he has left. Not in a morbid way, just curious. Like, does he think about that? Does he count them? Or does he just pick out apples and figure he'll keep doing it until he can't anymore? I hope it's the second one. There's a bench outside the library with a little plaque on it that says, in memory of Robert Patterson, 1934 to 2018. He loved this view. And I sit on that bench sometimes, and I look at the view, which is just the main street, a couple of shops, the bank, some trees. And I try to imagine loving it so much that someone would put it on your memorial bench. And you know what? It's a pretty good view. Nothing spectacular. But on a nice day, when the light hits the brick buildings just right, and people are walking around and someone's dog is tied up outside the coffee shop wagging its tail at everyone who walks by. It's nice. It's a good view. I think Robert Patterson was probably a pretty wise guy. My uncle is 72 now. He still does woodworking in his garage. Made me a bookshelf last year, which I didn't ask for, but really needed. He brought it over in his truck, helped me set it up, and then stood back and looked at it for a long time, not saying anything. Then he said, "That's a good bookshelf. That'll last longer than me." And I said, "Come on." And he said, "What?" "It's true. It's oak. Oak lasts forever." And then he asked if I wanted a sandwich, and we ate sandwiches, and that was that. But I think about that bookshelf now, every time I look at it. How my uncle's hands cut that wood and sanded it and fitted it together. How someday, a long time from now, hopefully a very long time from now, that bookshelf will still be here holding books, and my dad won't be, and that's sad. But it's also kind of beautiful, isn't it? That things outlast us, that we make things that go on without us, like bridges or songs, or cinnamon roll recipes. I read once that every person dies twice, once when they stop breathing, and once when someone says their name for the last time. I don't know if that's true. I don't know how you'd prove something like that, but it's a nice thought. It means people stick around longer than you'd think. As long as someone remembers them, they're still here a little bit. My grandma's been gone for 26 years now, but I still think about her cinnamon rolls. And when I think about them, I can almost smell them. That cinnamon and butter smell. And for just a second, she's right there in the kitchen, taking them out of the oven, telling me to wait because they're too hot. So I guess she's not all the way gone yet. There's a guy I know. His name is Don. Works at the hardware store, who has a terminal illness. I won't say what it is because that's his business, but he told me about it last month when I was buying some picture hooks. Just mentioned it casually, the way you might mention you're going on vacation. He said, "Doctor gave me about a year, maybe a little more if I'm lucky." And I didn't know what to say, so I said, "I'm really sorry, Don." And he said, "Yeah, Well, what are you going to do, right? And then he asked if I needed help carrying my picture hooks to the car, which seemed like a ridiculous question because they're picture hooks. They weigh nothing. But I said sure, because I figured he was just being nice. We walked out to my car together, and he was moving kind of slow. I don't know if that was from the illness or just because Don's never been a fast walker. And when we got there, he handed me the tiny bag of picture hooks and said, "You know what I've been doing? I've been noticing things more. Like really noticing. This morning, I noticed the way the frost was on my windshield. Made these patterns like ferns, you know, and I just stood there for 5 minutes looking at it before I scraped it off. Beautiful. Never really looked at it before. And then he went back inside. I sat in my car for a while after that, thinking about frost patterns. Thinking about Don standing in his driveway, dying, looking at frost. Thinking it was beautiful. I don't think I've ever really looked at frost patterns. Not really. I mean, I've seen them, obviously. Everyone's seen them. But looked at them? Paid attention? Probably not. That night I looked up frost patterns on the internet, which I know kind of defeats the purpose. But I was curious. And I learned that they're called dendrites, and they form because of the way water molecules freeze onto cold glass. The patterns are random, but also follow rules. Mathematics. Crystal structures. Nature just doing its thing, making something beautiful on your windshield, whether you look at it or not. I thought, that's nice. That's a nice thing to learn on the same day you found out your friend from the hardware store is dying. Death makes you think about time a lot. How much you have left. How you're spending it. Whether you're wasting it or using it right. I waste a lot of time, probably. I spent 45 minutes last Tuesday watching videos of otters holding hands. Not for any reason. Just because someone sent me one video, and then the internet showed me more videos, and I watched them. 45 minutes of otters. And part of me thinks, Joe, you just wasted 45 minutes of your life watching otters. You could have been learning a language or calling your mother or doing literally anything more productive. But another part of me thinks, I watched otters hold hands and it made me happy. That doesn't seem like a waste. I think about this a lot. What counts as wasting time? Because we're told we should be productive. We should be doing things that matter. We should be making every moment count. And that's probably good advice. But also, sometimes you just want to watch otters. And when you die, do you regret the otters? Or do you regret not watching more otters? I don't know. I guess it depends on the person. There's a woman named Margaret who lives down the street from me. She's 93, still lives alone, still does her own shopping. Drives this enormous old Buick, very slowly everywhere she goes. I mean very slowly. Like you could walk faster. But she gets where she's going eventually. I helped her bring her groceries in once, and while we were putting things away, she told me that the secret to living a long time is not worrying about living a long time. She said her whole life she never thought about her age, never thought about dying. She just did things, went places, had conversations, made dinner, watched TV, complained about politicians, fed birds, she said, and here I am, 93 years old, didn't even notice. I think that's probably good advice. Although it's a little late for me because I've already been thinking about death for several hours now. But maybe after tonight, I'll stop thinking about it so much. Just go back to doing things, noticing frost, watching otters, helping Margaret with her groceries, just being alive until I'm not. That sounds nice, actually. My Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, she died last year. She was 68. Cancer. She knew it was coming for about 6 months, which I think is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because you can prepare. Say goodbye. Get your affairs in order, as they say. But a curse because you know. You wake up every morning, and you know. I visited her a lot during those 6 months. I didn't know what to do or say, so mostly I just sat with her. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we watched TV. Sometimes she slept, and I just sat there, reading or looking out the window. One time I was sitting there. She was asleep, and I was watching birds at her bird feeder. She had a nice bird feeder right outside her bedroom window, blue jays and cardinals mostly, and I thought, this is so sad. Linda's dying, and I'm watching birds. But then she woke up, and the first thing she said was, "Are the birds back?" And I said, "Yeah, there's a cardinal right now." And she smiled and said, "Good, I like the cardinals," and we watched the cardinal together for a while, not saying anything. And I realized, this is what it is. This is what it comes down to. When you're dying, you don't want big dramatic conversations or profound revelations. You just want someone to sit with you and watch the cardinal. That's enough. At her funeral, a lot of people told stories about her. Funny stories mostly. She was a funny person, loved to laugh, told inappropriate jokes at Thanksgiving, that kind of person. But the story I keep thinking about is the one her neighbor told. He said that every winter, without fail, Linda would leave out food for the stray cats in the neighborhood. Not in a crazy cat lady way. Just, she knew there were a few strays, and she knew winters are hard, so she'd put out some food. Never made a big deal about it. Just did it. The neighbor said, "I don't know if Linda knew this, but there's this one cat, an orange tabby, who's been coming around for years. And I just want everyone to know, that cat's going to be fine this winter. I'm going to keep putting out food. Linda would want that." And that made me cry more than anything else anyone said, because it was such a small thing, feeding stray cats. But it mattered. It mattered to the cats, obviously. But it also mattered to the neighbor. It mattered enough that he stood up at a funeral and promised to keep doing it. That's legacy, I think. Not big things, small things that people keep doing after you're gone. I've been thinking about what I want my legacy to be. If I want a legacy at all, I'm not sure I've done anything worth remembering. I haven't invented anything, or written anything important, or saved anyone's life. I teach choir to middle schoolers, which is a noble profession, but not exactly world-changing. I help students learn to sing in harmony. I teach them about breath control and pitch and rhythm. And sometimes, if I'm lucky, I teach them to love music. But mostly, I just try to keep them from goofing off too much while we learn America the Beautiful for the spring concert. Is that a legacy? I don't know. But I had a student once, this was years ago, named Tommy. Quiet kid, didn't talk much. Wasn't particularly good at singing, but he tried hard. Always showed up. Always paid attention. I ran into Tommy a couple years ago at the gas station. He's in his 20s now, working construction. He recognized me, came over, said hi, and then he said, "Sir, I just want you to know I still sing in my truck sometimes, when I'm driving to work. Helps me wake up. And I think about your class sometimes, how you used to say singing is just organized breathing. I think about that a lot, actually, when I'm stressed or whatever. Just organize my breathing." And then he paid for his gas and left. I stood there for a long time thinking about that, about Tommy singing in his truck, about him remembering something I said, probably something I didn't even think about when I said it. Just something I said one day to a classroom full of bored middle schoolers, and now it's in his head, years later. Helping him wake up. Helping him when he's stressed. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's legacy. Death is strange because it's the most universal thing. Literally everyone dies. No exceptions. But it's also the most personal thing. Everyone experiences it alone. You can be surrounded by people, holding hands, saying goodbye, but ultimately you go by yourself. That used to scare me. The aloneness of it. But I'm not sure it does anymore. Because I think maybe we're alone in lots of moments. Not in a bad way, just in a factual way. Like right now, I'm talking to you, but I'm alone in my experience of talking to you, and you're alone in your experience of listening. We're together, but we're also separate. Two people having two different experiences of the same moment. And that's okay. That's just how it works. And maybe death is like that too. Just another moment we have alone, the way we have lots of moments alone. Although I hope when it's my turn, there are birds outside the window. I've been to a lot of funerals, maybe more than most people my age. Small town, you know. You go to funerals. It's what you do. Even if you didn't know the person that well, even if you only met them once at the supermarket and they told you about their grandson who plays hockey, you go to the funeral. And I used to think funerals were depressing, which obviously they are. Someone died. That's sad, but I've started to see them differently. Because funerals are really more for the living than the dead. They're a chance for everyone to come together and say, this person was here. They mattered. We noticed them. That's important, I think. There's always the same structure to funerals around here. Visitation first, where you look at the body, if it's an open casket, and you think about how they don't really look like themselves anymore, how they look like a wax version of themselves, how death makes everyone's face look kind of the same, smooth, peaceful, empty. Then there's the service. Someone, usually a pastor, sometimes a family member, talks about the person, tells stories, reads some Bible verses or a poem. Everyone cries a little, or a lot, depending. Then you go to the church basement or the VFW hall, and you eat ham sandwiches and potato salad and cookies that people brought. And you talk, you tell more stories. You laugh sometimes, which feels wrong but also right. You drink bad coffee from industrial-sized urns. And then you go home, and life keeps going. The first funeral I remember going to was for my Uncle Richard. I was maybe 7 or 8. I didn't really understand what was happening. I just knew we had to dress up and be quiet, and everyone was sad. I remember looking at him in the casket and thinking he looked like he was sleeping, which I guess is what they want you to think. Makes it less scary for kids. He's sleeping. But even at 7 I knew that wasn't right. He wasn't sleeping. He was dead. Those are different things. At the reception afterward, I ate 3 brownies, and someone's grandma told me I was going to make myself sick. She was right. I threw up in the church parking lot about an hour later. My mom held my hair back even though I'm a boy and I didn't have long hair. Just instinct, I guess. She said, "It's okay, Joe." Funerals make everyone feel sick sometimes, and I thought she meant literally sick, like physically sick from eating too many brownies. But now I think she meant it a different way. Funerals do make you feel sick. Sick in your chest, sick in your throat, sick in that place where feelings live that you don't have names for. There's a poem I like by Mary Oliver. She has a lot of poems about death, actually. Makes sense. Poets think about death a lot, probably more than is healthy, but that's their job, I guess. Anyway, there's this one poem where she talks about how when you die you get to be part of everything. You become the grass and the trees and the rain and the wind. You go back into the earth, and the earth turns you into something else, over and over. Forever. I'm probably not explaining it right. You should read the poem. It's better than how I'm describing it. But I like that idea. That death isn't an ending so much as a transformation. You stop being you, but you don't stop being. You just become something else. Something without thoughts or feelings or worries. Just existence. Just atoms doing what atoms do. That seems peaceful. Although I would miss thinking. I like thinking. I like having thoughts, even when they're stupid thoughts or anxious thoughts or thoughts about what I'm going to have for dinner. I like the experience of being a person who thinks about things. But I suppose when I'm dead, I won't miss it because I won't be there to miss anything. That's the tricky part about thinking about death. You can't really imagine not existing because the act of imagining requires existing. It's like trying to visualize darkness when your eyes are closed. You can't actually see darkness. You just see the inside of your eyelids, which is a different thing. I'm getting philosophical now, sorry about that. It's late. This is what happens to my brain when it's late. I was thinking the other day about what I want done with my body when I die, buried or cremated, and I realized I don't really care. Do whatever's easiest, whatever's cheapest. I won't be there. It doesn't matter. Although, if there's a choice, I think I'd like to be cremated. Takes up less space, more efficient. Plus, my ashes could be scattered somewhere nice, like by a lake, or in the woods, or in the school garden at the elementary school where Sarah teaches. Although I don't know if that's legal. Probably not. There are probably rules about where you can scatter ashes. But the idea of becoming part of the soil where kids grow tomatoes for their science projects, I like that. That seems nice. Useful even, although knowing my luck I'd become part of a tomato that some kid hates and throws in the garbage. But even that's okay. Even garbage goes somewhere. Gets turned into something else eventually. It all goes somewhere. Nothing really ends. It just changes. I think that's comforting. My friend Mike, he's a dentist. You haven't met him. He told me once that he doesn't believe in an afterlife. He says when you die, you die. Lights out. Nothing. Just like before you were born. You didn't exist, and then you existed, and then you don't exist again. He said it very matter-of-factly, the way he might tell you that you need a filling. And I said, "Doesn't that scare you?" And he said, "Not really. I mean, I wasn't scared before I was born." It's the same thing. And I thought about that. How I didn't exist for billions of years before I was born, and that was fine. I wasn't sitting around in the void feeling anxious about not existing. I just wasn't. So why would not existing after death be any different? It's logical. Makes sense. But I still don't like it as much as the Mary Oliver version, where I get to be grass. Although maybe Mike's right. Maybe it doesn't matter what I like. Maybe it just is what it is, and whether I like it or not is irrelevant. That's a very dentist way of thinking about death, actually. I wonder what it would be like to know exactly when you're going to die, like if someone told you you have exactly 30 years left. Not 30 years and 1 day. Not 29 years and 364 days. Exactly 30 years. Mark your calendar. Would that be better or worse than not knowing? On one hand, you could plan. Make sure you do everything you want to do. Say all the things you want to say. Really make the most of it. On the other hand, you'd always be counting down. Every birthday would be a reminder. Every New Year's. Every Monday morning when you wake up and don't want to go to work. You'd think, only 29 years left. Only 28 years left. Only 27 years left. That seems exhausting. I think I prefer not knowing. Even though not knowing is also kind of exhausting in a different way. There's no good way to do it, really. Death is inconvenient, no matter how you look at it. I read somewhere, maybe on the internet, so who knows if it's true, that some cultures don't fear death at all. They celebrate it, have parties, sing, and dance. They're sad, obviously, but they're also happy because they believe the person is going somewhere better. or coming back, or joining their ancestors, or something. I like that idea, celebrating instead of mourning, although I think we kind of do that here too, in our own way. The reception after the funeral, the stories, the laughter. It's not exactly a party, but it's not all sadness either. We're trying, I think. We're doing our best with something that's impossible to do well. My grandpa, the one who was married to Helen, the cinnamon roll grandma, he died when I was 16. Heart attack. Very sudden, no warning. Just died one morning while reading the newspaper. My grandma found him in his chair, paper still in his hands, coffee still warm, and everyone said, at least it was quick. At least he didn't suffer. And that's true. That's better than suffering for months or years. Better than pain and hospitals and slowly losing yourself. But I remember thinking, he didn't get to say goodbye. He didn't know that morning was his last morning. He didn't know that cup of coffee was his last cup of coffee. He didn't know to hug my grandma a little longer, or tell her he loved her one more time, or really look at the sunrise. He just died, mid-newspaper, mid-coffee, mid-life. Is that better? I don't know. I used to think it was worse. Now I think maybe it's better. Maybe not knowing is a gift. Maybe saying goodbye is overrated. Maybe the best way to die is right in the middle of something ordinary, thinking you have all the time in the world. Although I still hope I get to say goodbye, to some people at least, to my mother, to my friends, to my students maybe, although that might be weird. Hey everyone, I'm dying, just wanted to let you know. Keep practicing your scales. Yeah, that would be weird. I've been talking for a while now. You're probably getting tired. That's okay. That's the point, actually. You should be getting sleepy. Let me tell you one more thing before you go. Last spring, I was walking home from school. It was late afternoon, nice day, warm but not too warm. And I saw an old man sitting on his porch. I'd never seen him before, didn't recognize him, but he waved at me, so I waved back. And then he called out, "Beautiful day, isn't it?" And I stopped and said, "Yes, it really is." And he said, "Every day's beautiful when you get to my age, even the bad ones." And I said, "How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?" And he said, 97. 97 years old and still here. And I said, "That's wonderful." And he said, "It is. It really is. Every morning I wake up and I think, well, I'll be damned. Still here. What a gift." And then his wife or daughter or someone came out and helped him stand up, and they went inside, and I kept walking. But I think about that man all the time, about how he saw every day as a gift, even the bad ones. Even at 97, when everything probably hurts and you've lost most of the people you loved, and you know you don't have much time left, still here. What a gift. I want to be like that. I want to wake up every morning, even when I'm 97, even when everything hurts, even when I'm lonely or scared or tired, and think, still here. What a gift, because it is a gift, all of it, even the sad parts, even the parts where you think too much about death and can't sleep and have to talk yourself down from existential panic at 2 a.m. Even that's a gift, because you're here, you're alive. You get to think about things and feel things, and watch cardinals and eat cinnamon rolls and help your neighbors with their groceries. You get to be part of this strange, beautiful, temporary thing called life. And someday you won't be. Someday it'll be over, but not tonight. Tonight you're still here, still breathing, still warm under your blanket, still listening to me talk about death in the most boring, gentle way possible, trying to make it feel less scary. And maybe it is less scary now, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's still terrifying and you're lying there thinking, "Joe, this is not helping. This is making it worse." If that's the case, I apologize. That wasn't my intention. But I hope, that maybe somewhere in all these words, somewhere in all these stories about my grandma's cinnamon rolls and Don at the hardware store, and the 97-year-old man on his porch, maybe there's something that makes you feel a little more at peace with it all, because death is just part of the deal. It's the price of admission for getting to be alive. And if you think about it that way, if you think about death, not as an ending, but as proof that you got to have a beginning and a middle, it's not so bad. You got to be here. You got to exist. You got to look at frost patterns and watch otters and taste coffee and hear music and feel the sun on your face. You got to be part of the world, even if just for a little while. And when you're gone, you'll be part of it in a different way. Part of the soil, part of the air, part of the story that keeps going without you, the same way it went on before you got here. And that's okay. That's how it's supposed to be. So close your eyes now, if they're not closed already. Feel how heavy they are. How heavy your whole body is, sinking into the mattress, pulling you down into sleep. Think about something simple, something good, a memory that makes you smile, or just focus on your breathing, in and out, in and out. Organized breathing. That's all it is. You're doing great. You're going to be fine. And tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you'll think, still here. What a gift. And you'll be right. Good night. Sleep well. I'll see you in the morning.